The border region between Thailand and Cambodia, often a place of bustling trade and shared culture, descended into chaos in late July 2025. What began as a simmering dispute suddenly erupted into open warfare, catching many by surprise. The fighting was not a minor skirmish but a serious military confrontation. Both nations, neighbors with a long and complicated history, unleashed heavy weapons against one another. The sound of artillery fire and rocket explosions shattered the peace of remote villages, forcing terrified residents to flee their homes with whatever they could carry. The conflict quickly became the most severe clash between the two countries in over a decade, signaling a dangerous breakdown in diplomatic relations. The human cost of this sudden violence became apparent almost immediately. Reports from the ground painted a grim picture of death and destruction. At least 35 people were killed in the intense fighting that raged for several days. These casualties were not just soldiers. Civilians were caught in the crossfire, with homes and community buildings being struck. In Thailand, the death toll included 14 civilians, a devastating statistic that highlights how the conflict spilled far beyond designated military zones. The violence created a humanitarian crisis, with families torn apart and livelihoods destroyed in a matter of hours, leaving a deep scar on the border communities. The scale of the displacement was staggering, demonstrating the widespread fear that gripped the region. Over 270,000 people were forced to abandon their homes, seeking safety from the relentless shelling. In Thailand, more than 139,000 people were evacuated, while on the Cambodian side, a similar number, over 134,000, fled the advancing conflict. Emergency shelters and evacuation camps were hastily set up to accommodate the massive influx of displaced families. The normal rhythms of life came to a complete halt as schools and hospitals were forced to close, and even national celebrations in Thailand for the king's birthday were cancelled due to the crisis. The conflict was marked by the use of sophisticated and deadly military hardware. Video footage that quickly circulated online confirmed the exchange of missiles between the two armies, a significant escalation from past border disputes. Cambodian forces were seen utilizing Russian-made BM-21 rocket launchers, powerful weapons capable of causing widespread damage. The sight of these weapons being actively used underscored the gravity of the situation. This was not a simple border patrol clash. It was a calculated military engagement involving heavy artillery and advanced rocket systems, turning quiet farmlands into a volatile and unpredictable war zone. The seeds of this violent outbreak were sown months before the major fighting began. Tensions had been building since May 2025, when a Cambodian soldier was killed in a border incident. That event created an atmosphere of mistrust and heightened military readiness along the disputed frontier. However, the situation truly ignited on Thursday, the 24th of July. On that day, 5 Thai soldiers were seriously wounded when a landmine exploded near the border. This incident acted as the final spark, transforming the lingering tension into open conflict. Both sides quickly mobilized their forces, and what followed was a rapid and violent escalation. The fighting intensified dramatically over the following days. By Sunday, the 27th of July, the conflict had grown to include direct attacks on civilian areas. A Cambodian rocket struck Thailand's Sisaket province, killing one person and injuring another, bringing the reality of the war into non-military zones. This attack prompted a fierce response from Thailand, and the cycle of retaliation began to spiral. The fighting was particularly fierce around disputed temple sites, such as Tam Wen Tom and Ta Kwai, areas that have long been a source of nationalist friction between the two Southeast Asian nations. The military actions were not limited to ground troops and artillery. Both countries engaged in a broader military campaign. Cambodia accused Thailand of using its aircraft to drop smoke bombs, providing cover for a significant ground offensive into Cambodian territory. Meanwhile, Thailand reported that Cambodian forces had surged troops to the border and were firing rockets indiscriminately into its sovereign land. The use of missile systems became a defining feature of the conflict, with both militaries targeting each other's positions from a distance, showing a level of strategic engagement not seen in previous disputes. The conflict continued to rage even as diplomats scrambled to find a solution. On the morning of Monday, the 28th of July, fighting was still being reported along the border, a clear sign that military commanders on the ground were not ready to stand down. This persistence of violence created a tense backdrop for the peace talks that were scheduled to take place later that day. Every new report of shelling or casualties added pressure on the negotiators, reminding them of the urgent need to stop the bloodshed before it spiraled even further out of control and caused more suffering for the people living in the region. As the fighting raged, a war of words erupted between Bangkok and Phnom Penh, with each government blaming the other for starting and escalating the violence. Thailand's military officials lodged serious accusations against Cambodia. They claimed that Cambodian forces were not only firing rockets into Thai towns, but were also using civilians as human shields near the contested temple areas. Furthermore, Thailand alleged that Cambodian snipers were active in the region, deliberately targeting Thai soldiers and civilians. These accusations painted a picture of a Cambodian army that was allegedly violating the international laws of war in its military conduct. Cambodia, in turn, issued its own powerful condemnations of Thailand's actions. The government in Phnom Penh accused Thailand of being the aggressor, claiming it had deployed a massive number of troops to the border with the clear intention of launching a major offensive. Cambodian officials stated that Thai forces were the first to fire heavy weapons and had expanded the conflict deep into Cambodian territory. They pointed to the use of Thai aircraft as evidence of a premeditated and large-scale attack. These counterclaims suggested that Thailand was not merely defending its border, but was actively engaged in an invasion. The international community watched the escalating crisis with growing alarm. The United Nations Security Council issued a statement calling for an immediate de-escalation of hostilities. It urged both sides to show restraint and resolve their differences through dialogue, throwing its support behind regional mediation efforts led by the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. China also called for calm and a peaceful resolution. The global response was unified in its message. The fighting had to stop before it destabilized the entire region and created an even larger humanitarian disaster for the innocent people caught in the middle. Most significantly, the United States, under President Donald Trump, took a direct and forceful role in the diplomacy. President Trump announced the ceasefire agreement on social media, revealing he had warned both nations that crucial U.S. trade talks would not proceed until the fighting ceased. He threatened to impose a crippling 36% tariff on both countries if they did not comply by the 1st of August. This economic pressure was a decisive factor. U.S. and Chinese ambassadors attended the peace talks in Malaysia, with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirming that American officials were there to help mediate, adding significant weight to the negotiations. Under intense international pressure, representatives from Thailand and Cambodia met in Putrajaya, Malaysia for emergency talks. The meeting, hosted by Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, brought together acting Thai Prime Minister Phumtham Wechayachai and Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet. The negotiations were tense, reflecting the high stakes and the raw emotions from the battlefield. After hours of discussion, a breakthrough was achieved. Both sides agreed to an immediate and unconditional ceasefire, which officially took effect at midnight on the 28th of July. It was a crucial first step toward ending the violence and pulling the region back from the brink of a wider war. The ceasefire agreement was met with cautious relief by the hundreds of thousands of people displaced by the fighting. For them, the silence of the guns means a chance to return to what is left of their homes and begin the difficult process of rebuilding their lives. The agreement stipulated that military commanders from both nations would meet on the 29th of July to work out the specific details of the troop withdrawal and ensure the ceasefire holds. The hope is that this will lead to a lasting de-escalation, allowing families to feel secure in their villages once again without the constant fear of sudden violence erupting. However, the path to a lasting peace remains fraught with challenges. The root causes of the conflict, including the poorly demarcated border and long-standing historical grievances, have not been resolved. The recent fighting was also worsened by a personal feud between the political dynasties of Cambodia's Hun Sen and Thailand's Thaksin Shinawatra. These deep-seated political tensions could easily reignite conflict in the future if not carefully managed. The ceasefire provides a vital pause in the fighting, but it is not a permanent solution to the underlying problems that have plagued relations between the two neighbors for generations. For now, the agreement offers a glimmer of hope. It demonstrates that diplomacy, backed by strong international pressure, can succeed in stopping a deadly conflict. The future stability of the border region will depend on the commitment of both Thailand and Cambodia to honor the ceasefire and engage in sincere long-term negotiations to settle their disputes peacefully. For the people who call this borderland home, the promise of peace is everything. They are waiting to see if this agreement will finally bring the lasting security they need to rebuild not just their homes, but also their trust in a peaceful future.